You don't walk around with plans with coup in your pocket. You got that here.
The people involved, all of them are very highly skilled and combat trained.
You let people out of armies, you've got to give them something else to do. Otherwise, they only have one skill left.
They are doing something which they know how to do better than anybody else, you see, because of their background experience, especially in Africa.
Rumors of the coup has been circulating long before any real recruitment or anything took place.
People told me Severo Moto is the guy that's going to be the new government.
The people Kenya.
Who told you that?
The plan, that is what Simon Mann told me.
Simon Mann.
And Greg.
And Greg.
The plan was that they, half an hour after the people landed with the force from South Africa, they will fly in Severo Moto and the new government.
It's been 2 months now since the images that alerted the world to an alleged coup in Equatorial Guinea. Suddenly the spotlight was on this tiny West African country, a country that's seen its share of coups before this latest alleged attempt at violent overthrow. The current president, in fact, came to power through a coup in 1979. But whereas the upheavals of the past were about internal political struggles, the latest, most agree, had international fingerprints all over it and an explosive new ingredient, oil. Let's take a closer look at this country that's been called the Kuwait of Africa. This is Equatorial Guinea today, once Africa's only Spanish colony. Until 10 years ago, it was poverty-stricken, with most of its income coming from cacao and coffee. Then in 1991, massive oil reserves were discovered, and in 1995, Equatorial Guinea hit the big time when the first oil started flowing. Today, it's the third largest producer of crude oil in Africa, yet the average person remains very poor. In 1968, Equatorial Guinea gained independence after 190 years of Spanish rule. Its first president was Obiang Nguema.
Messias was by far one of the cruelest, worst dictators that the African continent has ever seen. He's murdered and placed into exile almost a third of the country. So the country is burdened by a very violent history.
This is President Obiang Nguema. He came to power by overthrowing his uncle and has been president for the past 25 years. Although Equatorial Guinea has officially been a democracy since 1991, every election to date has been marred by widespread allegations of vote rigging.
Messias destroyed the country. He destroyed the economy to the extent that when the president took over in 1979, Equatorial Guinea was the 158th poorest country in the world. And at this stage, Equatorial Guinea is the fastest growing economy in the world. It's got one of the highest GDPs in Africa. And all the key indicators are going through the roof. So the situation, no matter what, is improving.
Everyone agrees that Obiang's presidency is a great improvement on the wild excesses of his uncle. But Equatorial Guinea has a bad international record for human rights abuses and for interference in the judicial system.
When we went there, we were equally worried about the situation for the justice system, for the people in Equatorial Guinea, the levels of human rights abuses, the level of torture, and the interference by the executive in the justice system. There's no accountability at the moment. There's none of the usual checks and balances. There's no free press, no media, no civil society. That's a very worrying situation.
It's against this backdrop that the first news of a foiled coup swept the world. A group of arrested men were paraded on Equatorial Guinean TV. It was claimed they were planning a coup to overthrow President Obiang, to install a government led by militant exiled opposition leader Severo Moto. The leader of the group made what seemed to be an extensive confession.
Airfield, and then just show them where is the military bases and where is the entrance to the President's palace. And thereafter we stand back, they will continue what they want to do.
A day earlier, a plane load of men had been arrested in Harare for complicity in the same coup. The aeroplane they were on had left the United States 4 days earlier. From there, it had flown to Sao Tome and from there on to South Africa. In South Africa, a local crew and the 65 alleged mercenaries boarded the plane at Wonderboom Airport. They flew on to Polokwane International, where they cleared customs, and then on to Harare. There they were to refuel and load weapons, but were arrested while doing so. The Zimbabwean government said they'd been tipped off by South African intelligence. The Zimbabwean group insisted they were on their way to guard a mine in the DRC. Deter, in his confession, said this was a smokescreen, that the Zimbabwean group were in fact on their way to Equatorial Guinea.
There's no concrete evidence, but I think everybody here can make the little sum to see that the people for the DRC was actually meant to come here. And it was just a smokescreen to get the people out of South Africa.
No, well, as far as I know, it's one of the worst kept secrets because everyone knew about it beforehand.
After the break, who's who in the coup? If ultimately proved to be true, the coup attempt in Equatorial Guinea has a storyline straight out of a thriller. So too are the characters implicated. In Equatorial Guinea, Nick Deter, a former South African Special Forces operator and leader of the alleged advance group. In Zimbabwe, Simon Mann, a former British Special Forces soldier and the leader of the alleged backup group. Together the men have a common history in the now defunct South African mercenary outfit, Executive Outcomes. The bulk of the almost 80 other men come from the battle-hardened ranks of the former 3-2 Battalion, a ferocious fighting unit in the old SADF. Now, are these men the dream team for a coup of this nature? Or are they, as some insist, innocent men with legitimate business interests falsely accused? South African Nick Deter was a former Special Forces operator and also worked for Executive Outcomes. In his latest venture, however, he closed a number of lucrative business deals with, amongst other, the brother of the President of Equatorial Guinea. It's alleged Deter was to have provided transport and guides for the coup. In return, it said he was to have been paid around 7 million rand and allowed to continue his business in Equatorial Guinea. Simon Mann is a former British SAS soldier. He was a founder of Executive Outcomes and later headed up the British mercenary outfit Sandline International. He's a long-time associate of Nick Deter and is now based in Cape Town. It's alleged he was the ringleader of the coup. Greg Wales is a London-based accountant, an associate of Simon Mann and a former financial advisor to Executive Outcomes. Nick Deter fingered him in his confession, and it's now alleged he brokered the financial backing for the coup. Eli Khalil is a millionaire international oil broker based in London. He's admitted to being a friend of Severo Moto, and it's alleged he was the financial backer of the coup. He denies this involvement. But the foot soldiers of this alleged coup have none of the vested interests that the ringleaders and financial backers seem to have had. They are the cannon fodder of this venture. It's unclear whether any of them knew the true aim of the mission. The majority were once members of the so-called Buffalo Unit or 3-2 Battalion of the former SADF. It was apartheid South Africa's first black fighting unit, made up of former Angolan soldiers and mainly white South African officers. It was usually controversial, but a greatly feared fighting force.
The thing is, they are foreigners, obviously, and that's why they are unique, from Angola mostly. And secondly, They are career soldiers because it's only work they know. And thirdly, they are just bloody good. We took them over from FNLA because they couldn't train them properly, and we did. And as Savannah went along, the leaders all disappeared, and so we were stuck with these chaps, and I brought them back, and we, my recce instructors, we turned them into the best infantry unit this country's ever had.
In 1993, 3-2 Battalion was disbanded. It was seen as a concession in the negotiations with the ANC. Few of the men had the qualifications to be incorporated into the new defence force. Most were given small once-off pensions and demobilised. Suddenly, thousands of well-trained, combat-hardened soldiers were without jobs and without a future.
The whole structure collapsed. That is why they're sitting there disorientated and conflict on the asbestos heaps. So they are, emotionally speaking, psychologically speaking, they are scattered, as it were. Although physically they're sitting there, they are scattered in that way, you see. There's nothing there, any coherence there anymore, which is very, very, very sad. And unfortunately, because of this, because they've been disbanded in '94 by de Klerk, there was no career path for them forward up to retirement time. That disappeared, you see. So they were just left there, cut off in the lurch, as it were. And they're not employable, except in security firms. And that's why so many of them try and find jobs in security firms. And that's why so many of them end up in security firms in Africa.
In the years since its dissolution, former 3-2 Battalion members have been eagerly recruited by those who can use their skills. Many have found work with private security companies working inside and outside South Africa. Many of these men also worked for Executive Outcomes when it was the world's best-known mercenary outfit. Many saw action in Sierra Leone and Angola. With their training and combat experience, the former 3-2 Battalion soldiers are obvious targets for military recruiters offering good money. And by all accounts, Simon Mann's recruiters were offering just that.
When they were demobilized from the old South African Defence Force, they only received a payment of 20,000 rand, and there were no structure to deal with them. And fortunately for them, Executive Outcomes made use of their services both in Angola and in Sierra Leone.
The ones who are in security organizations are there, firstly, for the money. I mean, you can't be very proud of the security firm you work for because they haven't got the same spirit of the esprit de corps. But they were basically there for the money, and they are doing something which they know how to do better than anybody else, you see.
There's no structure in which these very well-trained, some of the best soldiers in the world are accommodated. So it will always be a problem until such time that a structure exists to accommodate these former soldiers.
The 3-2 Battalion people here in South Africa, in a specific moment of history, there wasn't such a program. I think that's a lesson that has been learned for the future, that you let people out of armies, you've got to give them something else to do, otherwise they only have one skill left.
It's precisely these skills that have now got these men into all this trouble. Whether any of the ordinary members of this group knew what they were getting themselves into is questionable. Apart from Nick Toy, everyone now denies their role in this alleged coup. The Zimbabwean group insists they were on their way to Burundi. From there, they were to take up a contract to guard a mine in the DRC. Yet, to date, the identity of the mine remains a mystery, and nobody has come forward to back up this alibi. Du Toit has made a confession, yet interestingly, he has the most to lose by overthrowing the very government with whom he has lucrative multi-million-dollar business deals.
Well, they had brilliant contracts with the government, which they would have made a lot of money out. And it is air charter companies, fishing, they had fishing concessions. And so with all these contracts, I mean, it's unthinkable that they would have got involved in a thing like this.
That is one of the confusing aspects. He was in a business partnership with some very, very senior Equatorial Guinean politicians. Why he would then choose a different course, I don't know.
Much has also been made of Detoy's speedy television confessions. This has led to speculation that he might have been tortured, or that authorities might have had so much evidence that not confessing was pointless. Some have even suggested he might have been used to infiltrate the plot. After the break, crying for help. As the story has unfolded, so have the questions and the rumors. At least one intelligence source has confirmed to me that the coup was the world's worst-kept secret, and that agencies had been tipped off late last year already that recruitment was taking place. Very few hard facts have emerged apart from Detoy's on-camera confession, a confession many insist could have been made under duress. But sources in intelligence circles have confirmed to me that other evidence linked to these men include detailed plans and photographs of installations and targets, and that prosecutors would therefore not rely on that confession alone. But it's precisely the justice system in Equatorial Guinea that has supporters of these men very worried. Last week, family members and friends of the men gathered at the union buildings in Pretoria to ask the government to intervene. They want the men to be extradited to South Africa and to stand trial here.
We would like to hear from the Zimbabwean government officially that they are going to extradite the people to Equatorial Guinea or not.
It's however widely expected that the Zimbabwean prisoners will be extradited to Equatorial Guinea and that the whole group will stand trial there.
Assist us as citizens of this country to protect the lives of our men, fathers, sons and friends who face almost certain execution in a country which has no respect for the basic human rights for which South Africans have fought so hard and which now constitute the guiding principle in our democracy. Thank you.
These teary sentiments have found little sympathy. The government has said they will intervene, but only if the men are condemned to death. If the men were extradited to South Africa, they could be charged with contravening the Foreign Military Assistance Act, known here as the FMA. It's a largely untested law, and that's why some now speculate the men were deliberately allowed to leave the country.
In terms of the fact that the South African government allowed them to leave, I think it was a deliberate effort by the government to prevent any future such action, and that the guys stand trial in the countries.
This current case of the people in Zimbabwe and Equatorial Guinea is probably the best deterrent for future actions of this sort. In the past, mercenary activity, private military companies in Africa have generally either made a large amount of money or got off very lightly if they were caught. They've overthrown governments in the Comores and worked in the Seychelles and Sierra Leone and Angola, all for fairly good money. If you want to stop them, one of the best ways is to put them in one of those horrible jails in Africa, so that the next guys take it a bit more seriously.
It's going to be very difficult to prosecute these guys within the South African legal system.
Our FMA Act is untested because the only two prosecutions have been plea bargained. So nobody knows how constitutional the law is, nobody knows where the limits are. Because it goes beyond common law, it will be applied restrictively in the favor of the defendants rather than in favor of the state. So it's much easier to take your chances with a very well-established and good legal system that you have in South Africa with a very unsure law, which may have constitutional problems, rather than go to a place like Equatorial Guinea where justice system virtually doesn't exist and your chances of conviction are about 99%.
This horrifies Marge Payne. Her husband has no military background. He's been a commercial flight engineer for 27 years. 2 days before the ill-fated flight to Harare, he was contacted by one of the pilots. They wanted him for a freelance job aboard what he was told was a charter flight to Burundi. Now he's in Chikurubi maximum security jail.
I mean, it's ludicrous to think he was going to go and overthrow a government. I mean, look at his suitcase. It's got 2 packets of 2-minute noodles, 2 shirts, a T-shirt and a pair of slops. I mean, let's get real. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous to even suggest something like that. I've had to sell my house for the legal fees. So yes, I'm not in good shape at the moment. I don't know where I'm going off when I have to move here. But I will sell anything and do anything to have my husband home, because I know he's not guilty of anything. All he's guilty of is taking a job to fly an aircraft. That's it. It's a terrible, terrible feeling, because he's a very proud, very, very proud and honest man. And for me to have to see him in leg irons and handcuffs and looking like he does, like a convict, I can't work through it. I just cannot work through it. And he tries to keep a brave face. I know for me, he smiles and he says he's fine. I know what kind of a person he is. He's very soft-hearted. I don't know how he's coping with it. I really don't.
I'm almost certain of it, that the majority of people on that aeroplane didn't know the details, or were just assuming they were going to do a security job. Whether it was a real security job or a coup, that's probably what they knew anyway, that they were going to do security in Africa, get a large salary, hugely over and above what they could earn in South Africa, and took it.
Obiang Nguema, he came to power in